In this lesson, we'll briefly talk about the process of using keyboard shortcuts and creating your own keyboard shortcuts inside of Cinema 4D. Okay, so once again, we're just going to start with a blank scene to keep things simple. So let's start with maybe just a couple of simple objects here, maybe a torus and maybe just a simple little sphere. Now, the process of using keyboard shortcuts inside of Cinema 4D is somewhat unique as far as most applications are concerned. You have your basic keyboard shortcuts, which if you hover over certain commands, if you look down here toward the bottom of the user interface, if there is a keyboard shortcut for the command that you're hovering over or for the tool that you're hovering over, a lot of times Cinema 4D will let you know. So for example, watch this area down here as I start to move my mouse over some of these commands here in the menu. So frame all. You can see again down at the bottom of my user interface, Cinema 4D says that this command frames everything in the current project. Now you notice there's no keyboard shortcut listed here, but if I move down to the next one, frame geometry, again down at the bottom of my user interface, you can see this command frames the current geometry of the project. And you can see shortcut Alt-H or H. Now that's a pretty standard keyboard shortcut. So if I select an object, press the H key on my keyboard, Cinema 4D will frame that selected geometry. So if I take maybe this cube, move it over here, and again with this selected, press H, there we go. So that's a pretty standard keyboard shortcut, but there are a few keyboard shortcuts that Cinema 4D uses that actually require sort of a key sequence. So for example, if I go up to display, again, watch this area right down here as I start to move my mouse over some of these commands in the menu. So we have something like this garage shading. Again, if you take a look down here at the bottom of my user interface, shortcut N-tilde-A. Now, anytime you see that little tilde that separates two of these keyboard shortcuts, that means that it's one key followed by the next. So in this case, the keyboard shortcut to switch to something like constant shading, again, if you look down at the bottom of my interface, is going to be the N key followed by the E key. Now, that's going to become fairly common in Cinema 4D as you start to work, sort of getting used to these sequences of shortcuts. So again, let's say I want to use the keyboard shortcut to switch to something like that constant shading. Again, N followed by E. So if I press the N key on my keyboard, you can see as soon as I tap that, Cinema 4D will pop open this little menu showing that, okay, I've initiated the first part of that keyboard sequence, and now if you look down, it shows me what key I would need to press next if I wanted to get a certain effect. So if you look up toward the very top, the A key would be to get to my garage shading. Down toward the middle, you have the G key, which would be, let's say, my lines view. So N now followed by G, and now I get to this wireframe view. And now if I wanted to go back, let's say once again type N, and now let's say I type E to go to constant. And there we go. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you sort of figure this out, it'll become pretty much an unconscious thing for you to just kind of use this really quick little keyboard shortcut sequence to get a lot of your work done. But just keep in mind that as you start to get into a lot of these different tools, this will become sort of a fairly common theme inside of Cinema 4D, this idea of using a keyboard shortcut sequence to achieve a certain effect. Now, inside of Cinema 4D, we can actually set up our own keyboard shortcuts. So let's say there's a certain tool or command that we use a lot, and maybe there is no keyboard shortcut for it. Well, if we want to build one, we could go up to Window, Customization, and let's go to this Customize Commands. Now this will pull it up, open our Customize Commands palette, and basically this lists pretty much every single command that's available in Cinema 4D. Now we can come in here and start to filter this down a little bit. So let's say that I wanted a keyboard shortcut where anytime I initiate this keyboard shortcut, it creates a new cube in my scene. So what we could do is go to the name filter. Let's say I want to see if there is a keyboard shortcut for that. I could go up to name filter, and cube. There we go. So now Cinema 4D will filter this down, and now it will only show me the commands that have to do with the word cube. In my case, there's only one. Add cube object. If you look over here, there is no keyboard shortcut. But let's say we wanted a keyboard shortcut for maybe a new material. I can come in here and type material. Now this shows me all of the material related commands in Cinema 4D. If I look here, here's new material, creates new material, and there is a keyboard shortcut for that, Control N. Okay, so let's say now we want to come in here and make our cube keyboard shortcut. So type it in, cube. That brings me to this one single command, add cube object. Again, no shortcut existing for that. So I'll select this. Down in the keyboard shortcut, I can now just type in whatever I want. So let's say I want to do maybe Alt-C. So I hit Alt-C on my keyboard, and there it is. Now, before you do this, what you may want to do is, let's actually clear this out. You can see that Cinema 4D is actually remembering anytime I click or anything like that. So a lot of times what you can do is just simply click on the command again, and that will clear it out. But what I wanted to mention was the fact that we can, in addition to filtering out a keyboard, or rather a command, we can actually filter a shortcut. So let's say we want to see if a certain keyboard shortcut is being used somewhere. So let's say Control N. I type that in. Now Cinema 4D will show me all of the commands that use that keyboard shortcut. Okay, once again, let's say I want to test Alt-C for my new Create Cube command. I type in Alt-C, it's blank, which means it's open, I can use it. So now go back to Cube, select that, shortcut, Alt-C. Now I can just hit Assign, and there we go, Add Cube Object, Alt-C. So I'll just keep that easy to remember, C for cube. Once I'm done, I can just close that out. And now, anytime I hit Alt-C on my keyboard, there we go. Now I get a new cube. And I can Alt-C once again. And you can see it's actually creating sort of a new cube inside of that. So really some neat stuff that we can do with this. Now, if at any point in time you decide maybe you don't want a certain keyboard shortcut to be used anymore, let's say I decide, well, maybe that wasn't a good idea. Maybe I don't need that assigned here anymore. I can just go in, find my command, select it down here, and delete. Now you can see the keyboard shortcut is no longer there. Okay, so that's a look at how we can start to create our own keyboard shortcuts and just sort of a quick sort of understanding of how Cinema 4D uses these key sequences as a very, very fundamental part of its keyboard shortcut.